What is going on, y'all? It is the KMBest podcast with Gerry Thompson. I'm incredibly grateful for the reception our first podcast received. I was kind of expecting that this would be take a while to get up to numbers that the snapshot saw, but currently the first podcast has 2,000 views on YouTube, which I'm super grateful for because it's a very thrown together thumbnail, very thrown together editing. I'm doing all the back end stuff this time, so I'm just glad people are clicking on it. Thank you so much, of course, also to my co-host, Gerry Thompson, for doing this with me. I'm glad we were able to get some traction under us after episode 1. And this is episode 2, where we start to really fall into a groove. We don't have to introduce ourselves as much. I'm KMBest. I'm really good at Marvel Snap. He's Gerry Thompson. He's way better at Magic. And we are here mostly to talk about actual stuff that happened in Marvel Snap this week. And that's, I think, what we're really going to try to start off with. We're going to talk about the new card Penny Parker. We're going to talk about the general metagame, the OTAs, and what they've done to that, and speculate a little bit about Doom 2099. So with all that said, let's start with Penny Parker. Gerry, where are you at with everyone's favorite Evangelion ripoff?
I like Penny, but that is not the same as how strong I think she is, if that helps. Basically, like, you give me anything that's like A plus B, so like play Agony, then play Penny, I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty happy to do that. I'm pretty happy to try and put things together with that and see what I can do with it. And those things have been pretty fun, and in some decks, she has been quite good, relatively strong. But yeah, not one of those cards that I think everyone has to buy, like you absolutely need it or your account is ruined.
Yeah, what I'm struck by with her is that there have been two major ways of utilizing her so far. The first is very straightforward. It's just you play her in a Wiccan deck because she's a 2 that gives you a 3. The second is I've seen her in some other mid-range decks where she's a 2 that ramps you into 5, which gives you Galacta Kitty. And then I've also seen her, I guess there's a secret third way, which is I've seen her in Move Bounce. And I'm not 100% sold on her there, but the fact that she seems to be showing up in all of these spaces, there's this thing that happens with new Marvel Snap cards, especially ones that have as wide a sort of breadth of application as Penny, where like for the week that they're new, they get played in a bunch of stuff until eventually we figure out that they're not actually all that good here. And I think that like there is this level of overhype that comes with every new Marvel Snap card release that has to mean that decks like this have to be taken with a grain of salt. Are we positive that she's going to be an A+ card in those like mid-range Galacta decks? I don't know. Are we positive she's going to be an A+ card in those Move Bounce decks? I don't know. I'm pretty positive she's an A+ card in Wiccan. Like, that one seems like a given to me. But the other stuff about her, does she fit there? That's a little bit more, I'm not so sure. And it gives her like kind of a range where if it turns out she is a card that is required in those decks and those remain good, she's absolutely worth purchasing. But I think those remain good is something that doesn't really happen to a lot of decks in Marvel Snap. There's a lot of flux in the metagame.
Yeah, it honestly that whole thing is super weird to me. Just the fact that a card like Fenris Wolf can come out and it is in so many decks for like a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then it just falls off the face of the earth.
It goes back to its floor, right? Like it's in discard decks and Moon Knight decks now. And some Wiccan decks with like the Gladiator package.
Yeah, but I mean, before you just saw like Negasonic being everywhere, for example, and it's just like, I always think like, did something change? Did Fenris get worse? Have people adapted to it? Are they better at playing against it? Or is it just the hype has worn off and like new shiny card has come out? And I think that is mostly what it is because you're more in touch with this stuff than I am. But like looking at the win rates for like these Fenris decks, right? It's not like these decks are winning 45%. Or some like abysmal amount and people are still playing them. Like they actually have good numbers to them too.
Yeah, like, and it's not like they weren't good when the card came out too. Like every stat tracker was like, oh yeah, no, this card is doing good things. It's been in a lot of stuff. Is it a question of like there is a degree to which it could be a thing of metagame shifts, right? Because like to me, the best Fenris deck was Goon Knight. Goon Knight's best matchup was Arishem. Arishem got hit with a Nerf bat. We'll go more on that later. I think a lot of people are There's a lot of opinions about Arishem that I was hoping I wouldn't have to talk about this card much more, but I guess I have to keep talking about it.
I have
Um,
opinions about it too, in case that's surprising.
I think it's one of those. They're like being Jewish. There's a saying among our people where it's like if you get two of us in a room, there's three opinions, and I feel like that's the Marvel Snap community with Arishem. You get two people, you'll get three opinions about Arishem specifically. Like there will never be a lack of discourse about this card. All of that said, what I was trying to get at, someone in the comments last time was like, you guys need to go on less tangents and finish your thoughts. I feel so bad for that person because I have absolutely 100% forgot where I was in my sentence, and now we're just talking about Arishem instead.
Deal. Yeah, also, I don't know, I have very bad ADHD. And
Sure,
also
yeah.
last time on the podcast, I did mention a thing like, oh, we'll get to that later. We never did.
I
So
remember I was just proud of us for getting back to the win trading jokes where like we mentioned them 10 minutes in and then we got back to them an hour and a half in. Like
I do like
we did that.
I like a good callback.
Yeah.
So there is that. Like once you get the ball rolling on it,
Mhm.
it's good. But yeah, Arishem. This nerf seems good. I think that perhaps hot take here, maybe, I
Hmm.
don't know, but perhaps the community was maybe overreacting a little bit in terms of like how negative of a thing Arishem was pre OTA.
Uh, I think that is a very accurate assessment, personally. I see a lot of complaining about Arishem that negatively polarizes me to be an Arishem defender. I think that it is, it was like a 51% win rate deck that became like a 50% win rate deck after the nerf. And it's like, if it was a 51% win rate deck, it wasn't ever the best option anyway. You were probably throwing away a little bit of equity to play it. And the reason it was constantly seeing play was because it has a really appealing play pattern. And I think people kind of miss that the play pattern of Arishem actually is appealing to a large number of people. I would not be surprised if it was like the single card the most people own out of Series 5 or something like that. Like this is a card that has appeal beyond just being good. It's been good before. It's been the best deck before. It hasn't been that in months, and it definitely isn't that now. And to be like, oh, people are still playing it, the nerf wasn't effective. You don't want to destroy everyone's favorite card because people are mad about
No,
it.
the best nerfs are just that. They are nerfs.
Yeah.
They are things that weaken the card and like the deck slightly, but allow them to still see play a reasonable amount of the time. And yeah, going to like flat 50% win rate. Okay. Like
I wouldn't be shocked if it was
that
lower,
sounds
honestly.
well, sure. And I mean you could also slice that for different spots on the ladder
Yeah.
and whatnot and see what that means. I don't know. Like I also think I'm looking at a lot of RSM deck lists now
Yes.
and I'm just like, what are people thinking?
What do
I
you
feel like
mean?
people are just kind of like building them wrong now.
Like what?
Uh just like not over indexing on 4 cost cards.
There's not enough good Forward cost cards to over-index on, which will change when we get to Doom 2099. We're gonna have to table that. But like right now, the 4 cost cards you want to over-index on are like not incredibly appealing. It's Galacta, and like I've played a decent amount of Gwenpool and Arishem. There's a reason she never became a staple there. She just wasn't as good as some of the other things you could be doing in that deck. I would love to over-index for 4 cost cards, but we need at least one more really busted one, which we are getting soon.
Sure. So I think there are a few options though. Like one is you can try and do stuff with Symbiote Spider-Man. I think that that's fine.
Mm.
I think it's not great, but that's like a solid fallback option for basically any deck. If you're doing the Arishem Thanos stuff, which I'm I'm still kind of not, I don't know, fully decided on whether or not that's a good thing or not. It's just like I play with it and it's like sometimes the games are smooth, sometimes the games are not, but like that is sort of what you're signing up for, especially with both those cards is you get a variable play experience, which
Yeah.
is both a pro and a con, right? But if you're doing Thanos stuff, you can play Misery. I think Misery then becomes quite good.
I'm
And the other thing is a lot of 410s. You could just do Scar stuff.
Yes. And I think that actually is the strength of the Scar stuff, is that it allows you to just do 410s and play things like that. but also the Scar stuff, or specifically the Surtur stuff, the fact that you no longer get to 3 on 2, and the fact that you want to be doing 4s on 3 now, I'm a little bit out on that. I will say post-nerf, I'm more impressed with the Thanos decks relative to normal RSM than I was pre-nerf, because of that additional ability to get access to the stones, because of it being a better Mockingbird deck, all of that stuff. But I do have, here's I'm going to put on my conspiracy hat for you. Are you ready? You ready for this?
I'm ready. I'm always ready.
Arashim was the best budget deck in the game. They nerfed it, so now you have to go by Valentina, and it's no longer a budget deck. 6,000 tokens, please.
That's fair. I honestly, Valentina is like another one of the cards that fills the 4-drop slot,
Yes.
right? But is not a card I've seen in every single RSM deck, which seems kind of like a slam dunk.
Oh, no, it is a slam dunk.
So,
she is in every one of the decks that I've played. She's the new Agent Coulson. But we've replaced a free-to-play card with a pay-to-win card. Stay woke.
I would be all about it if there was also a Valentina bundle in my shop right now.
The fact that there isn't a Valentina bundle right now in your shop is only indicative of the fact that they are not very good at monetizing this game, which I think we already knew. Ergo, it is even more proof. If they actually had a Valentina bundle in the shop right now, and she was like incidentally good in the metagame because of a change they made, that's way too high level. There's no way.
Maybe this is just me, but I have this thought about conspiracies where just like the sheer mention of the word kind of makes me think that the people doing it are smart.
How do you mean?
Like, if you have the shadowy cabal getting together,
right,
doing this thing behind the scenes, manipulating people en masse, they got to be pretty good at doing it, right? Because they remain theories. It is not like how many conspiracies have been like blown wide open and people had their eyes opened and whatnot, right? So though your whole premise of like, oh, this is a conspiracy, they're just really bad at it, I don't buy.
You don't buy the like bumbling conspiracist logic where it's like not necessarily a conspiracy on purpose, but a conspiracy be like not necessarily even an intentional conspiracy, rather a structural one, where the reason for this behavior is structural rather than intentional, so that just like they're in situations that incentivize doing this. Is it like I bet if you could corner a designer and ask if this was intended, they would say no. But then if you asked if it was an outcome they were happy with, I think they might say yes. Like I can imagine Glenn Jones being like, yes, I think Valentina has not had a home. It's nice to have cards have homes, and then ignore the economic implications.
I think Glenn has better things to do with his time than come up with weirdo backdoor ways to make Valentina stronger.
That's also true. I feel like if they wanted to make Valentina stronger, they could simply give her a Hydra Bob stat line.
Sure. That's one way to do it. I mean, yeah, you can get the numbers high enough always.
Did you actually... Here's another tangent. Did you see the answer Glenn gave about Hydra Bob, like comparing to Martyr, saying that like a 1/4 Hydra Bob would not have even been better than Martyr? And one of the things that really pops up in my YouTube comments all the time is Hydra Bob's really busted. Is it safe to buy it, or is it going to get nerfed? And I read that answer and I was like, wow, they really don't think that card is a problem? That seems crazy to me.
It's funny because it got buffed into the state that it's in now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that means that it is more or less likely to get nerfed.
God, I don't either.
I think if anything, it leads me to believe that the most likely outcome is like a complete rework, which in most instances is going to be a nerf.
Yeah, because, it's already on the highest possible end of power, so most changes will be below that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to rework Hydra Bob into something that is stronger than its current state. So I don't know.
He's a 1/6, same ability.
I'd be impressed.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably safe to pick up Hydra Bob, but I also think that people are over-indexing for how good he is right now because of how mid-rangey the meta has been recently, where pure stats have value, and that's not a guaranteed state of affairs. When some metas are defined by, like, Invisible Woman, Killmonger, teching against bounce, Hydra Bob's not really going to be all that relevant in those situations. He's
Right.
relevant in mid-range on mid-range fights because he's simply a good use of energy no matter what. But I do think that people buying him, expecting him to be like always amazing all of the time, I think he's closer to old Jeff than he is to like the GOAT.
Which is funny because old Jeff is current Jeff also,
Yeah, but old
technically.
Jeff had no
But
competition.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to gauge these things, I feel like you would have to look at current win rates for the card. Is that even a possible thing to do? Does Untap do that?
Untap does do that. I am not a big guy who trusts those numbers because there's an inherent win rate bias. The people who own Hydra Bob are gonna at this point be the people who are more indexed towards winning. B, the people that use Untapped are gonna be more indexed towards winning. And C, there's this general issue with win rate tracking individually where I can believe it for certain. I find it very hard to believe their card win rates basically ever. I can believe an aggregate deck win rate a lot easier.
So there's a website for Magic that is similar to this, 17 Lands,
Mhm.
where if you play a bunch of limited on like Magic Arena, for example, you can kind of do the same thing where it's like you go there, you track your stats, your win rates, and
Yeah.
then it uploads it into a pool, populates it with everyone else's, and it's just like you look at what colors are doing best in a limited format, and it's like, oh, everything wins 55% of the time or greater. That's kind of
Yes.
weird.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you correct for that? And it's like, I don't know, to just take 7% off of everything, like, can you do something like that?
I remember a conversation that I saw on Twitter between Ginky, Johnny Gutman, and the Ham. And the conversation was basically like Ginky using 17 lands and the Ham saying like the mistake you're making here is that you're using a bunch of data from people beating up on shitters to then apply it to people who are actually good at the game. And like
Yes.
that was like the gist of the conversation. I still remember it was very funny for me to watch. He's like, okay, you're in the building where the Pro Tour is taking place, right? What I need you to do is go outside and go to the GP and go look at the draft tables there and then tell me you want to listen to that person. And like, that was
Yeah.
basically the gist of the conversation about 17 lands. And to a degree, I think it applies here.
You told me the two people who were involved, and I was like, that's not going to end well for Ginky. And like, no shade to him. Like, he is very good at
He's extremely
many
good.
different card games,
Yes.
right? But I just like, if Ham is opening his mouth, it is to say something smart, and he's probably going to destroy you.
I remember because it was extremely funny. But to be clear, Ginky is my boy. I've known him since Hearthstone. Like watching someone like that succeed is one of the coolest things for me. Like little child prodigy he is.
Mm-hmm. He was the one that was playing like 3 Igonjos in his white weenie deck.
How would you
think.
possibly expect me to know that?
I don't know, because I feel like I remember it, and he's your boy.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
I'm better
like
friends with him than you are.
I don't remember the intricacies of deck list choices from what, a year and a half ago?
See, this is the stuff that piques my interest, you know?
So like you know him specifically for making what I'm guessing from context deck building mistake. He's running too many.
I was like kind of against it and thought it was too many, and then he was adamant that I was incorrect, which I don't know, is still kind of like hard to say, right?
Sure.
They were very good for him over the course of the tournament. It's just one of those things where it's like, this is so weird, and this person is like consciously choosing to do this thing that is like very different, and I think a lot of people would laugh at you for, and he's still like confident he's correct. And not because he's a moron, it's like he's a very smart person too.
Yes.
So it's one of those things that gives me pause. And it's like Dave Shields says kind of the same stuff where he's like, if you see someone like play off curve, like do something a little like less obvious than the average player would, or even like slightly above average person, then he wants to watch this person play because he thinks that maybe there's something he can learn from them. And that was that kind of moment for me.
The lack of conformity being backed up by like a resume and a mind that is worth respecting sort of piques your interest.
When the conditions all meet correctly, I
Yeah.
guess, then yeah, it's very favorable. But I don't know. Certainly not all the time. There are a lot of times I just look at it and I'm just like, this person is definitely wrong and I don't want to engage with them. I'll just keep this opinion to myself, you know?
Speaking of people that are definitely wrong and we don't want to engage with, Arishem is a card that I, at this point, am 100% convinced is balanced and fine. What is there like an analogy for it in another card game? I'm asking because you have a breadth of experience across card games, and I struggle to think of a card like this that is like, by basically all objective metrics, pretty much balanced, being played because it's fun and unique, and also extremely, extremely overhated.
I mean, there's plenty of kind of similar examples in Magic where I don't know, things like Second Sunrise, Sensei's Divining Top, like maybe those are not great examples
Those are, yeah,
because
no, though that's
like top was probably too powerful, but like these are things that got banned because of like dexterity sort of stuff. It's
sure.
just like for reasons that are way outside the scope of what you should normally be indexing for, right? But I think Etherworks Marvel is one where they looked at the numbers and it's like, yeah, this is 48%. Why are y'all being a bunch of babies?
Yeah.
And then people kept complaining. And then eventually they're like, fine, we banned it. You happy? And then people were just like, yeah. And then Teamer Energy was the best deck. And people were like, well, this sucks too.
I think Marvel's a good one. Did it actually just have like straight up a 48% win rate when it got banned?
Towards the end, yeah. Because like Emrakul, the Promised End had rotated, so you were like marveling into Ulamog. So if you just draw this thing, it's uncastable, you know. So like the deck just had a very high fail rate. And you know, people were playing decks that were good into it as best they could, really, and stuff like that. So it was just like it got about as worse as it could be, but people were just like, this is stupid. You just play this thing on turn 4 and then you spin the wheel, and sometimes I lose the game on the spot, and it's like, yeah, but that's fine.
I do think that, like, I think this is actually a pretty fertile ground for a conversation that I didn't plan on having that is probably worth having, which is the role of RNG in card games. Because I'm basically like a massive RNG defender, but I also think it should be hidden a little bit. And so I kind of look at Arishem and I'm like, that's so smart. That's so smart.
Like, it is and it isn't, because you, like, especially when the card first came out, it's like, oh, +1 max energy. You could see how that'd be good, right? Shuffle 12 cards in, double the size of your deck. Arishem itself, not all that impressive, right? So I guess you're looking at like 11 cards that you actually want to play and 13 that maybe you don't, right? And it's still kind of in your face as to how much RNG is involved in this whole process. I think the hope there is that, well, winning games with like Spider Woman or like Dr. Octopus, like these cards that maybe you wouldn't normally play in your deck, where it's like, oh, these are actually pretty good when I have +1 extra energy, you know? I think that funness of the RNG can kind of make up for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very much in your face. And I agree with you. I think that it should be hidden, but also I think it should be hidden so that people don't have reasons to complain.
When I think about...
But I think it's fun. I think RNG is fun.
When I think about the things people complain about with Arishem, there's like a certain type of pretty good player who complains about not being able to play around the specific stuff in the deck. And it's like, you're not able to play around the specific stuff in the deck, but you can play around the general shape that you know the deck takes, and that specific RNG blowout that's happening to you isn't all that different from a specific RNG blowout happening on a location. And I to me, it just sort of feels like Arishem provides a focus for people to like complain about how it's not fair that they lost. And as someone who loves more than anything, complaining about how it's not fair that I lose, because it's not. I deserve to win every game. It's actually not fair that I lose. The only possible way that I could lose is if my opponent were sniping or cheating in some way. That's the only actual explanation. But I get it. Like, I'm a big, whiny, complainy, externalize my actual issues onto everything that isn't me, so I don't have to accept that it's my responsibility. I totally understand that. Is there a degree to which Arishem made that too obvious, where it's like when you do get blown out by the randomly generated claw or whatever, you're just like, this sucks so bad? Is there anything they could have done about that, or is that just like, you're gonna have to live with it with this kind of design?
Well, it is interesting that you segue like how much you value complaint equity
Oh yeah.
into then asking whether or not they could have like played around Arshem's design by removing people's complaint equity. Like you explained it perfectly, where people are going to find an excuse to complain no matter what.
Yeah.
And like the thing, like the RNG claw is just like, that's just a good card. They could just have that in their deck, and I think Arshem is a card where this happened in Hearthstone a lot too, where they had a lot of, give you a random card type of stuff,
Yeah.
right? But people will complain about like, oh, I got like 0 outered or like 1 outered effectively off like this discover or something. And it's just like, nah, actually, if you look at the card pool, you died to 25% of the cards or whatever.
That is one of the things that people get at. Like, that one is definitely true about RSM, where they're like, oh, I died to this random RNG claw. Like, bro, you would have died to Jeff. You would have died to M'Baku in the deck. You would have died to Dr. Doom. You would have died to like a million different things there. Like, you died to like a lot of stuff.
They're just like, stop,
yeah,
please stop. Just like, let me complain. Someone give me validation, and then we can move on. This exchange is done.
The one other thing I will say though is, when you ask me what I remember from Hearthstone, like the number one Hearthstone play I remember is the Paveling book play, where like that is a literal 1-outer. And I don't think, like, the fact that I remember that so many years later, is that not vaguely indicative of the fact that RNG creates moments? It makes these games more fun. What is it? The top deck Lightning Helix, Antoine Ruel. That was in 2004, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
the book was into Flame Strike, right?
I don't know if the book was into Flame Strike. I think the book was into, it might have been, whatever it was a removal spell for a Malagos. It might have been Fireball.
Oh, okay.
Something like
that.
Like
a polymorph or something?
Yeah, no, it was a polymorph. That's what it was. It was a polymorph to remove opposing Malagos. That was the only actual answer.
There were multiple games with Babbling Book that were involved where it was like, oh, it just served up exactly the perfect card. It wasn't just like the one instance too. I think there were like 2 or 3 games.
Mm-hmm. But that is still, I don't know. I tend to think that RNG is the reason these games are played. Like, yes, there's a bunch of other stuff, but fundamentally, the fact that the outcome of the game is in doubt, even when you're playing someone way better than you, is the appeal.
It is, like, even though you don't want to admit it, right? And I don't know, look at how Magic's been around for 30 years, and you can certainly complain about various things within Magic's ecosystem or how they design cards or whatever, but Magic is still here. And there have been plenty of games that have come out where they're like, oh, we're like Magic, but we fixed it. We took out the unfun stuff, like getting land screwed or whatever. And it's like dead in under 2 years every time.
Yeah, the only one of those games to succeed was basically, what, Hearthstone? And
yeah, but they have a bunch of RNG just in different spots.
Yes, like they took this, like, it's the same amount of RNG just distributed differently. And I think the more people understand that being good at a game can happen even with random outcomes involved, I still get comments that are like, how are these the best decks if the game is purely RNG? And it's like, great question. That's because it isn't, and you're bad. And it's like, I don't know, there's no nice way to say stuff like that, but it's like, they're the ones who are coming in and making it an issue, and it's like, I don't really know how else to respond if you're literally not capable of comprehending that, there can be skill involved in handling the outcomes of things.
Well, I got a fun question for you.
Sure.
What is the best way to combat someone's cognitive dissonance?
I wish I knew. I have
Yeah,
no idea.
exactly.
I wish
Because
I knew that for my
that's
own
a
sake.
that's effectively what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Anyway, the point of this diatribe is RSM did nothing wrong, and especially right now is doing nothing wrong. I've seen very little evidence that he is among the best decks in the game. I've seen some fairly compelling evidence that like the builds people are playing are like sub 50%. Like there's I do think it's possible that when Doom 2099 comes out and we can actually start spiking on 4 more heavily, that the deck can be back and playable and good, but I worry, I don't know if I worry. I am taken aback by the fact that these guys seemingly got everything they wanted and they're still upset that the deck even exists.
Yeah, I guess at that point you do just want to murder it
Yeah.
and screw everyone who purchased the card and like doubly screw anyone who is daring to have fun with the card and enjoy it, you know? Like
Yeah. I
and
also I
what's the thing? Like just put Cassandra in your deck, you know?
or, play a bounce deck that goes over the top of them. They can't really interact with you. They have one Alioth. So all you got to do is just final turn. Here's my 30 power human torch that I copied with my Frigga. They don't beat that.
Yeah, so I understand maybe not necessarily wanting to play a specific deck to counter Arishem.
Sure.
Uh But when things like Cassandra exist, where it's like you could just put this in pretty much any deck and it's going to be solid, and then if you play against Arshem, it's real good. It's just like you don't have a whole lot to complain about, I don't think.
I
But
think a lot
obviously,
of
that is
people
not what these folks want to hear.
I think a lot of people play Cassandra wrong against RSM. Like
They
they're
don't
just
wait.
yeah, they just run it out there, and then it gets Shang-Chi and Shadow King, and they're like, this card doesn't even counter RSM. And it's like, no,
Yeah, I
that's
did
your
that like
final turn
twice.
play. That's your final turn play.
Yeah,
It's a 315. Stop.
yeah. I mean, why? Like you know that you play, you know, like a blob like that, right? Where it's like, oh, maybe try and throw priority,
Yep.
sneak it in the lane to steal it or whatever. But because she costs 3, you're not going to play it the same way. It's just like their deck is still going to be huge,
Yep.
you know?
Like it, the Cassandra Nova. Like I really do think that's a large part of it. Why people don't think she's as good as she is because they're just like playing her and getting her Shadow King. And it's like that deck has to play Shadow King Shang-Chi because Cassandra Nova exists. Like that's one of the big. It would probably already play Shang-Chi, but the fact that there's Shadow King in all these decks, a lot of it is just Cassandra Nova exists.
Yep.
All right, enough about RSM. Hopefully, I never have to talk about this card again. At a 50% win rate, there is not a lot of justification for talking about it again.
Until
On
next week or whenever Doom comes out.
Right, maybe it'll actually be good then. On to the very important topic of the everything else that happened in the OTA, which is to say, I saw a lot of discontent with this OTA, which I
Really?
thought a lot of discontent. Because when I looked at the OTA, I was like, wow, they did a bunch of really cool stuff. They buffed Elsa when they're giving it to us for free, and Kitty Pryde just entered Series 3. They nerfed Arishem, they nerfed Alioth, and then my comments were all like, I'm a poor person. Like this is literally like a thing they would say is like I don't have the money to compete in Marvel Snap. I only have Arishem and they just destroyed my deck. And I like that was the entire thing. I apologize for doing the like I'm a poor person. I was originally going to take that into like a different direction where it was like I am a poor starving boy and the only sustenance I have is Arishem and second dinner just robbed it from me. But I stopped halfway through because that sounded rude, but then what happened was it ended up being more rude because it just sounded like I was actually saying it straightforwardly. So now I have to do this long-winded explanation so people don't think I'm a huge jerk. Anyway, the basic thing that I got out of that was that it's starting to feel to me that the player base's expectations of everything have hit a point where it is more or less not possible for second dinner to meet them. And a lot of that comes back to the failings of the economy. But I am sort of torn because I can look at this and see, here's some good stuff that happened. There's some important steps forward in a patch like this. They're nerfing cards that people are complaining about. They're nerfing cards that aren't that fun, super high play rate like Goliath. They're buffing cards that people are getting for free. That's a good thing to do. But it's like a too little, too late kind of situation where that may have mattered 6 months ago, but doing it now while not fixing anything about the economy is not helping people.
Yeah, I mean, that is true, but what do you want them to do? Not make a single OTA until they fix the economy? Like,
right.
That seems kind of silly. And I don't, if, say, for example, like Glenn is coming up with the numbers on the OTA changes or whatever. I don't know who's actually in charge of it, but say it's like him doing it. I would assume that he is not the person who's in charge of fixing the economy.
Yeah.
It's not like he's the bandwidth is being spent on making OTAs instead of fixing whatever they're going to fix. So
yeah,
I don't really agree with that. I do think that I feel like they should have known that there were going to be a lot of problems, or that there have been problems for a long time. And I think that it is important to give them some amount of grace because of that, because figuring out a solution, and not only just like a solution for now, but a solution that will be workable, going forward with like the amount of cards available in the game ballooning over time and stuff like that. Like, how do you deal with these sorts of inflation? They do have to figure that out. And I do think that takes time.
Yeah.
Maybe that is because I've been inside the building of places like this. Like I worked at Wizards of the Coast for a little bit. And so I kind of see how a lot of this stuff works. And especially in mobile games, I think people are just like, bro, just hit the button. Hit the make our lives not suck button. And it's just like, that doesn't really exist, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I don't know how to explain that to you, but I do think that there is going to be a time where just like, okay, you've had enough time to try and figure this out. And now like the OTA, 30 OTAs from now, you're just like, what the hell is happening? Like all this stuff is meaningless when I can only get like a card a month or whatever it is.
And I think that to a degree, a lot of the changes that happened in the OTA were kind of meaningless. Like they weren't utterly meaningless. They happened and mattered, but they're not the kind of things that affect the metagame at a high level beyond the general reduction in power and play rate of RSM. And is that not in, like, to me, that's indicative of the meta being pretty good for most people. It's like a pretty good metagame right now. Open, a lot of stuff to do.
I was gonna say, what do you want, man? Also, right. Like, I think this is maybe one of the bangeriest OTAs of all time, because not only was it not doing stuff like Crossbones 4-8 to 4-9, where it's like card no one plays that definitely doesn't move the needle, like that sort of thing.
I mean, there were plenty of those in that though.
In this one,
yeah, Shuri to 4-3.
Okay, so that's one of the ones where I think the changes that they did make were not as small ball as the ones that they've made previously. Where like Stormbreaker got +2, Shuri got +2, and like you could make Ravonna Shuri arguments, I guess, potentially, as to like why maybe that's a nerf instead of a buff. I don't know, but whatever. I think a lot of like Cerebro just losing in energy.
Yes,
and it's just like, yeah, so Cerebro's a meme deck, whatever, no one cares, blah blah blah. I'm not a Cerebro enjoyer, so I mostly agree with that, but it's like, that's a big change. And like these cards getting like 2 random power, like these are big changes. These are like more exciting changes than many of the other OTAs, even if it's not affecting cards that, are in the top 10% of play rate or whatever.
They are 2s instead of 1s. Yeah.
Yeah, they're 2s instead of 1s, which is sick. And they are cards that are at least like on the fringe of playability, like Crossbones has now had his moment, right? But yes. Like back in the day where they're just like, give that guy a power. We'll get there eventually, when he's a 4-13 or something. It's like, nah, man, you're going to print Scar and Surtur before, you need to keep buffing this guy. So, and also, yeah, you make changes like that. Doesn't move the needle on the card at all. I think that these changes are going to move the needle on the card, even if we're not talking about like, tier 1, tier 2.
I also think what a lot of people want is for them to buff decks that those people own. Like, I think if they wanted to make like a really good impression, buff Destroy, buff Zoo, buff stuff like that, buff like decks that can sort of, or buff ongoing Spectrum. You know, Spectrum lost a point of power for absolutely no reason. She could easily be a 6/7 right now. You just buffed Enchantress. Go ahead and do that, right? Like that kind of stuff.
Why did that happen?
They thought the ongoing deck was too good.
Is that for like
No,
collection level 10
I
or
don't know,
something?
but they thought 6/7 Spectrum. They had to. They I think what happened was they buffed Captain America, and they were like, we have to take a point of power off of Spectrum to buff Captain America.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
I'm sorry.
Anyway,
Sorry I asked.
Yeah, that is actually accurate as far as I recall. But yeah, like stuff like that. I think it's not just buff these cards like Shuri and Beta Ray Bill and whatnot. It's also like go back into series 1 through 3 and buff some cards everyone has in a way that might be meaningful. Like Spectrum deck is not going to be amazing, but people have played the ongoing deck before, and making it slightly less embarrassing is probably a good thing. Why can Mojo not be a 2/3? Why can Spectrum not be a 6/7? Like these are just some little stuff that like first of all, the ongoing deck plays with Jean Grey in a unique and weird way that a lot of other decks don't play with, and I think that's nice. Second of all, it's gotten basically no love ever from any new card coming out in a very long time. And I guess
True.
I guess I just wish that like they were more willing to work with that archetype. Like, what about like an on reveal deck? When you think about what that is, I don't even know if you can make it exist anymore. Like Wong, what nobody plays a Wong deck anymore. It's just not a thing. And I wish, what if there was like a second on reveal enabler, right? Like there's stuff like that where it's like they're not
Are we talking Shutterwalk, or are we talking like Wong 2.0?
Wong 2. Like just Wong
Okay.
2, but instead of getting blown out by Cosmo Juggernaut, it gets blown out by something else. I don't know. Like just something that gives the deck a little bit of redundancy. I don't know. Where I just feel like these are the things that people actually want, and not Shuri to 4/3 affecting nothing.
So some amount of that, when you're talking about Spectrum, I'm like, hold on. Mojo's fine because it was like Series 2 or Series 3, if I remember correctly. Yeah, okay. And Spectrum is like one of the first cards you get, and I mean, I remember that experience, where it was just like, oh, do I play Spectrum or do I play Odin, and that kind of nonsense. And that is part of their onboarding process. So there are some amount of cards, I think, that they can't necessarily buff too much, especially when you're talking about getting them into range of viability of like today's tier 1 from it being a starter card, right? And maybe that's a problem with their onboarding process. And maybe that is a thing that they should have tried to work around, maybe.
I don't know. It definitely like I felt like for the first time I was really truly out of touch with the community, because reception of the patch was genuinely negative and my reception of the patch was very positive, which like and I feel like I've been thinking about it a lot and trying to figure out what it is that I got wrong, and that's what I landed on, which is like there's a lot of changes in this patch that don't change people's experiences of the game. And the one change in this patch that has the potential to change people's experiences of the game is a change to the card that is probably the most popular card you've printed in ever. And luckily, it didn't destroy the card, right? Like, luckily, the card is still alive and still good and still playable. But it definitely took me aback in my estimation of this. Because, like, I was happy about the Elsa buff. It's good that they're buffing a card they're giving out to us for free as part of their Christmas bonus. That's awesome. They should do that more. But also, did it matter? Is Elsa good now? I just think she's like fringe playable. You can play her, but you also like you play her in a deck with Galacta. You play her in a deck with Gwenpool, and you play her in a deck with Kitty Pryde, which is now in Series 3. But like, if you don't have that stuff, maybe Athena too, well, then you're not going to be able to play her. And it doesn't really matter how much stronger she is, because that's not going to change your ability to play the card.
I got Kitty for free.
I think I bought her. Yeah, I bought her. I bought her and got refunded, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
because I was playing in that. I came back in that period where
Mm,
he was going through all kinds of nonsense, and
yeah.
then they finally did just give her out for free. I was like, oh, cha-ching, let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, I bought her, got refunded. She worked through Wave. That was the funniest part about her. Is old Wave would set stuff to 4, but not her for reasons unknown to anybody. I think because she was on the board when it happened, so you'd pull her back to your hand manually, and then you could just play her for 1 through Wave. That's what Thanos was doing at the time. It was pretty sick.
Okay, so why would that work? But like the card that you draw is waived. You
Great
know,
question.
doesn't make any sense.
Probably, if I had to guess, it has to do with timing. Because the way old Kitty Pride worked was you would manually drag her back from the board to your hand, right? She didn't always
What?
auto bounce. You would pick her up. You didn't know this?
I thought it was just start a turn. I thought it was like 1-2, start a turn, bounce it +2.
That's what she is now, isn't she?
No, 1-2, 1-2 +2
Oh no
is
no
what
no
she
no
was
no no no
originally,
no!
right?
The
Yeah.
numbers, those nerfs happened later. You picked her up.
I didn't think that they ever had a thing where you had to like manually click on it. It's why all the discard stuff is like even, odd, random, rightmost.
I'm looking it up now. You're gaslighting me. Hold on.
I might be, I mean, I might be gaslighting myself, but also I'm pretty sure I was not playing during this time. So
I swear. Kitty Pride release Marvel Snap.
like activate is weird because it's like the one thing where you're like actually clicking on things and sort of interacting with them.
All right, Kitty Pride release Marvel Snap. I'm on Snap Fan. I'm flipping through all of these. Yeah. You can
Hit me.
return this to your hand to gain +2 power. You did it manually.
Yeah, I never played with her like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So she was released at you can return this to your hand to gain +2 power, and then 2 months later they fixed her, and it was when this returns to your hand +2 power returns at the start of each turn. You did it manually, I swear to God. And you had 2 days of it. She was out for 2 days before they realized that it was crashing the game. So she was
Ah,
effectively like an activate that worked during the staging. So like she'd be on the board, you'd pick her up and then replay her. And that got around Wave for no reason.
yeah, okay. Something weird is going on there, but also why the hell would they do that?
It was cool as hell. I loved it. It was great. It's a cool. The
So
card was awesome.
so this kitty only existed for 2 days.
Yes, before they disabled
Okay.
her. She also crashed. Like the reason they disabled her was not because of any of this crap, but because like 10% of the games she'd play in, you could just crash.
Cool.
So that's why they disabled her. That's why everyone got her for free. People forget how bad things were in the early days.
So this is one of the things where I'm you know, like I was playing around at some point like when they gave her for free and I was like, all right, tight, get her for free.
Yep.
Uh what is how long did that last? And like why I assume by you mentioning like, oh, she's going down to series 3 that it did not last in perpetuity.
I want to say it was
And
like
my
6
question then
months.
my question then is why not?
Because she was really good and you could get people to pay for her.
But if everyone else got her for free, uh, I don't get it.
I, you got a question for the monetization department at Second Dinner. Not for me.
I have many questions. I have many questions. That's not even at the top of the list, but it is one of my questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's give everyone this card for free for a little bit. Everyone loves it. It works perfectly. Time to start charging for it again.
Dude, especially 6 months is such a long time. Like you're just kind of a dick for pulling it after that.
It is a very funny sequence of events to happen where you like release a card that breaks itself, keep it out of the game for 2 months, refund everyone who bought it, and then give it out for free for a while, and then you're like, look, this card is too good to be given out for free. This card's just too we can't be giving this out for free. It's too good. And then, a year later, you're giving it out for free because it's in Series 3.
Mm. Oh man.
It's cool how I'm giving you like psychic damage by exposing you to like the multitude of weird things that have happened in this game.
Someone asked me when the 6-month period was when I quit, and I don't remember exactly when it was or why I quit. I know that I came back when Elsa and Loki were things, and I had a lot of fun during that time. Because those cards were cracked.
Yes.
But I don't remember exactly why I quit in the first place, except for like maybe I was just bored. And it was like new cards are coming out, but they just kind of suck, and there's nothing to really do in this app besides play ladder. You know,
Yeah.
there's yeah, they came out with Conquest, but that sucks too. Just takes forever. And I honestly think that was it. Was just I was kind of bored, and then it was like, oh, they actually made some cool cards. I'll go play again.
It
So
is one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is what makes a card appealing. Because I got a question on my last hot takes video talking about, like, I'm glad Snap doesn't have rotation. And I'm glad Snap doesn't have rotation. But there's only really two ways to go. Either you keep releasing cards that are increasingly strong and power creep and power creep and power creep until the game is totally unrecognizable, a la Yu-Gi-Oh! Or you start getting rid of some of those things and artificially paring the power level back. And that's what rotation does. But what struck me about it is how baked into that logic is the idea that to get players to buy new cards, they've got to be good. Like, I think fundamentally it's like they've got to be worth buying, and good is a way of making them worth buying. And I find it hard to believe that you could make, 60 cards, all of which are worth buying, none of which are better than anything else, right? It's like sort of an inevitable cycle that games go through. But as someone who's worked in game design, what is your approach to understanding the necessity of power creep in as much as it comes to, like, making sales?
I mean, okay, so I was at Wizards for about 6 months in 2013 rolling over into 2014. And then I came back a few years later to consult on Modern Horizons 1. And I will say that the kind of like driving factor behind those things was pretty different. And I would imagine that is very different now compared to those times too. So it's kind of weird where it sort of depends on what has been happening in your game as of late, or at least that's what it was the times when I was there, kind of, where 2013, 2014, I was working on Cons of Tarkir block, which was very like widely regarded as like a good set and like good for standard, fun to draft, like all these kind of like cool things, right? Whereas the block prior to it was Theros block, which was both like full of bad cards and pretty miserable. Like the cards that were very good were also miserable. Things like Mono Blue Devotion, Mono Black Devotion, cards like Nykthos, and then you just had sets where there was like no cards in them. So around the cons time, they're kind of trying to like rein that in and just be like, how do we make this fun? How do we make the cards appealing? They also had fetch lands in the sets, so like that was another like KSP, key selling point sort of thing. So like they had a lot of stuff going for them. But a lot of it was just like, yeah, we need to make cards better, just more appealing overall. And it doesn't have to be necessarily based on power. Magic's a little bit different that way, where there are more casual formats, and especially now, Commander has taken over.
Yeah.
This is a four player like free for all kind of style of game instead of what I am used to in card games, which is like 1v1 heads up competitive.
Well, hold on. Can I interject here to say that, like, Commander power creep is actually like a major issue they talk about all of the time, because as they release more cards that are like staple Commander cards, it homogenizes a format that is theoretically about, being self-expressive, but then you're playing a green deck with a bunch of dudes in Craterhoof Behemoth, and there's no real self-expression in that. Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird too, because now that Commander is the biggest thing, with every product they release, they have to very seriously look at it and be like, what is going to make this an appealing thing to purchase for Commander players?
Yeah.
So you might have a, direct to standard booster release that previously would be built for standard and draft. And now it's like, oh, how do we get some Commander cards in here? And it's like, well, how the hell do you do that? Because Commander's power level is upwards of here,
Yeah.
where standard is supposed to be like right in the middle, right? And I think that there is a fun, happy median where it's like 6 mana, expensive, like do wacky things, sorcery or whatever. Like, okay, you can put that in your set as a mythic rare. It doesn't see any play in standard. Maybe standard's a little too fast, or there are things like negate or whatever. But maybe that is a card that is very appealing for the commander players. And then you look at, I don't know, the prices of Magic cards in specific sets now, and it's like the most expensive card is probably $40, and it's probably a commander card. You know, like standard is not really driving the prices for things. So they found a pretty good way to do that. I think it is certainly dangerous and is weird territory. But realistically, it is tough because Snap does not have commander.
Yeah.
It has people who maybe want to play a little bit more casually. You know, they're not trying to get to rank top 69 on ladder or whatever. Yeah, that's your job. And like they have the benefit of being attached to the Marvel IP, which goes back a long time and likely captured a lot of folks who were maybe not mobile gamers, maybe not card game players, but they're just like, oh, Marvel stuff, you know, I like this. Like I know some people who don't play any mobile games, but they like Marvel stuff and they'll play like Marvel Strike Force, for example. And it's just like, I still to this day don't even know what that game is. I just assume it's terrible. And I only hear bad things about it being predatory. So I don't know.
To cycle back to the original topic though, like the necessity of cards being better to drive expansion. How true is that in your experience?
I think there are ways to make cards appealing that don't necessarily contribute to a power creep that is directly sitting on top of other things. I'm sure that there is a better way to explain this, right? But like Penny Parker, I think, for example, is a good example of this, where there's not a very good comparison to her that you can make. She's doing a lot of things. She has a lot of hooks in that she is energy ramp. She's kind of like card advantage-y, which plays into the Wiccan stuff, especially because she curves perfectly 2 and a 3. Spider has like the move thing on it. So yeah, you can play it. You can just go like torch into her into, all right, I got a 10 power thing. That's cool, you know? And is she even like more powerful than other potential 2-drops? Like we kind of started this cast by talking about how she's pretty solid in some things, but not directly overshadowing anything, you know? And I think that that is a very cool way to do it. Like you just have to mine design space that you haven't necessarily mined all the way before. And I think that there are things like Destroy or like Apocalypse Discard where they've kind of done a lot of that, unless you're just trying to print like strictly better versions of other things or give Deadpool or give Destroy like a second Deadpool, something along those lines. Like you can do those things to power up those decks, but like what could those decks gain now that would actually help them in a lot of sense? Because I don't know, Destroy even is like 14 cards that you kind of want to play, right?
It also carries with it an inbuilt economic resentment there, because suddenly your deck discard that was, you know, didn't require any Series 5 cards in January of this year. Now you have, you know, Proxima that you have to go get. You have Scorn that you have to go get. Like, it almost feels like every time they release a card targeted at one of these earlier pool decks, all they do is make the final form of the deck more unattainable for the average player. And that's like a bad, again, everything comes back to the economy with Marvel Snap, but like that is something I hadn't really thought a lot about.
Any Series 5 card that comes out is going to do that, right? If it comes out, it is good, it is strong, is appealing. People want to put it in their decks, right? Well, that deck is probably a little bit more unattainable than it was previously because you just kicked out, you know, Nightcrawler or whatever.
Yeah. And
I think that Destroy and Discard specifically, like you don't need Scorn, right? Probably helps a lot.
Kind of think you do.
Well, no, because look at the numbers, right? Say you're like 40% with discard, and then if you have Scorn, maybe you're like 48.
Sure.
Like, okay, that's good. That is certainly an improvement, but like you can hang even if you don't have Scorn.
I think I just
And
have
it's
this like
free.
instinctive aversion to doing that. You know what I mean? Where it's
I
like,
do, but like how else are you gonna power it up? I mean, scoring could have been like a King Eitri kind of thing. Like it could have been
yeah,
an agony, sure. But
is
like
like, is she actually that much better? I don't
ideally,
know.
ideally you don't like if someone is really happy playing destroy or discard and their deck is fairly free to play friendly, you gotta sell them something at some point because what are they gonna buy into? Like they should be selling pre-constructed decks, honestly.
Yes. Oh my
Because
god.
that would be a thing that someone would buy, but any individual card shows up in the shop and they're going to be like, well, even if I buy this, I'm still 7 cards off or whatever. And then instead, they just never buy anything. They're just like, I'll just keep playing Destroy, whatever.
They don't even have to be like
And
good precons. Just like $40 for like the destroy deck.
yeah, and maybe you get like 2 pretty good Series 5 cards or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Something that gets you most of the way there, like the discard deck minus Scorn, maybe minus Proxima and or Corvus, whatever,
Yeah. Like
like you put 2 of those cards in there.
I do think that like they have to gate that out of the new player experience. But if I recall correctly, right now when you get to CL 500, I think you get like a free Series 5. And I think at that point you should probably have the ability to purchase, here's the Wong starter deck. Here's the Deadpool starter deck. Here's the MODOK Apocalypse starter deck, right? And it's like the problem is they already own like 5 of the cards in that deck, so it makes it harder to sell as a deck. And I haven't really figured out a way around that.
Put in something that is probably not very good in the deck, but is also like a Series 4 card or something.
Right, but it's like, okay, here's the MODOK Apocalypse starter deck. Everyone already owns Apocalypse. Everyone already owns Blade. Everyone already owns Lady Sif. And it's like, I can't sell you stuff you already own. And the same goes for Destroy. Like, but what that does is create decks that you cannot play in and of themselves. So it'd have to be packaged as something else, where it's like here's the Wong starter kit, right? Rather than a deck in and of itself, just like a starter kit that contains the stuff you need. And that gives them a little more leeway with that, I feel like. And it feels like something they've experimented with on the web shop, and I just don't understand why it's not a bigger part of the early game experience.
So yeah, I mean, you could do the discard one with like MODOK Corvus, for
Yeah.
example, and I think that would be fine. Like, yeah, you're not a perfect 100% of the way there. You still need Proxima and Score and maybe something else I'm forgetting. I don't know, but like you're a lot closer to having like a powered up deck than you were before. Also, I think them wanting to keep this out of the new player experience mattered a lot on launch, and I don't give a shit now. like, it what does it do if they sell you 2 Series 5 cards? You know?
Yeah. Like,
You're still at the bottom of the mountain.
yeah.
And yeah, you can pay to win to some degree, like you'll get there a little bit faster, but like it's a slog, man.
Then they'll have to cut new ads, and they won't be Ben Brode talking about how you can't pay your way to power in his new game on Instagram Reels all the time.
No, but that's the thing is let people buy some cards.
Yeah.
You know? You can't buy your way to a full collection. I think maybe you can keep that still intact, but the way things are now, you still can't do that. Even if you offered like say 5 different things that had like 2 to 3, series 3, 4, 5 cards in them. Right?
Yeah. Like my pitch would be like pick like 5 archetypes. Here's like the Wong starter kit, here's like the Deadpool starter kit, here's like the the discard starter kit, here's like the Hela starter kit, here's like the Zoo starter kit. And then just pick like 1 series 5, 1 series 4, and a couple of key series 3s. And then put them in there for $40. Maybe there's also like some credits in there or something. And you're good.
Yeah.
Like that would go a long way.
I would probably just give them like some boosters for each of the cards in there too, because
Sure.
it's like, yeah, make your cards pretty.
Yep.
You probably enjoy this sort of thing. It's like the Hearthstone new player experience actually kind of exists now, whereas it didn't before, or like returning player experience, I guess.
Yeah.
So like when I started, they didn't give you dick. They didn't give you anything.
They give you decks now. It's crazy. They're good.
Yeah. So like you log on and they're like, here are some precons. Play with them however much you want or whatever, and then at the end of it, choose one of them to keep. Right? That's how it works.
Yeah.
Dope. Do that. And it's like, oh, you like this one? Here you go. Here's a Modoc for you. Go on, little buddy. You know,
Yeah,
enjoy your time.
that feels like the
And
kind of thing they should do, but it also feels like that has to be like a year or two away.
maybe, but then you also get a chance to sample some of our other fine wares and perhaps fall in love. You know, it's like you weren't really trying to build this Deadpool deck, but then you had a destroy quest and you were like, well, I got this destroy precon, so I'll try this out. And you're just like, damn, my null is enormous, right? Like this is the funnest shit of all time. And you're like, I picked the discard deck, and like that's cool. I still like you, Apocalypse, you know, but like I'm in a relationship with Deadpool now, and
He is canonically pansexual.
there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think let people experience stuff too, because that's part of the problem where it's like you see all these Series 5 cards, and instead you just bounce off it.
Yeah.
You know? And if you let someone test drive it, maybe they'd be a little bit more motivated to just be like, oh, I want to keep going until I get Galacta or whatever, because that card's super sick.
Yeah, I think it's not lost on me how like this stuff can work for like certain archetypes, but for like pile of good cards deck, it's just never gonna work because that's just like 8 Series 5 cards every time. And that's sort of where
Probably.
the like very obvious points of power creep start to hit, where it's like if all you're doing is playing things that are very efficient, those efficient cards are overwhelmingly recently released.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot sell a new player Red Guardian, I don't think. That is just not going to work. But if you built them like discard, destroy, zoo, Hella, you know, not to create more Hella gamers or whatever, you know, I'm sorry,
Gotta
Cam,
do what you gotta
in
do.
advance, but dude, they're going to be at rank 20. It's fine. You'll never see them.
You gotta do what you gotta. I'm serious. Like the one upside of Hella was always that it was cheap.
Yeah. And I don't know, hell, throw in Arsham there too, you know?
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. Give them like a $40 Arishem bundle that comes with like Arishem and Loki. Let them ruin people's days.
High Evo, another good one. I know that you're a big fan of that one for new player stuff.
I am the world's biggest fan of the fact that High Evo is in the Bruce Banner cache. God mode. That's like the one good cache decision they've ever made. They put High Evo in the cache with Bruce Banner. Beast mode.
That's smart. Does the Bruce Hulk work with High Evo?
I don't think it turns into High Evo Hulk, but it wants you to skip energy.
Yeah, that's fair. I would still think that that's kind of weird, but I don't know.
I don't. If it turned into High Evo Hulk, it'd be busted, right?
It might still be busted, honestly.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's no way that we're okay with that guy being 18 power.
I do like RNG.
Yeah.
And it has the potential to be a 212. Like that's not bad.
Pretty good.
You know?
I guess on the subject of, you know, it has the potential to be an XY. Let's talk about our potential 417 coming out next week. That is Doom 2099. And this card has me very scared because right now there's a bunch of like mid-rangey, no interaction decks that I don't know if they have enough points to ever beat Doom 2099 Sandman Doom. Let alone Zabud Doom 2099, something else Sandman Doom. And
yeah,
go ahead.
It is scary. The output on the card obviously looks pretty nice. 417 is with Doom itself or not?
Without.
No, just what's the number with Dr. Doom on 6?
It's that number plus 3 or plus 9 if you're counting the buffs. So it would be like a 425 with Doom, 426.
Yeah. I mean,
pretty good.
Like that. It sounds pretty good.
Pretty good to me.
Like,
yeah.
Ms. Marvel was kind of cracked, but
yeah,
that's pretty good.
Seems pretty good.
I do think that you know, for example, Enchantress got buffed. That's kind of nice. It's maybe not enough. That's still only one location, but I do think that things like this, I've also overrated them, but I think just in general, the populace overrates them, where it's like, oh, it makes a bunch of power, but it's spread out.
Yeah.
And it's like, if my ceiling on total power output is pretty high, but I can't choose where to distribute it, that means I'm going to lose hard to like Iron Man Enchantress, like Iron Man in one lane, Enchantress in another. And it's just like, yeah, literally have no recourse. What am I supposed to do? You know?
Yeah, I like the card that really sticks out that's like just gonna beat the crap out of this strategy is US Agent. It's just like you just like pretty much instantly win a lane with that card. Game
Yeah.
ends. Like you just like, oh, look at all my 5 power guys. Nope, they're all gone. Like it's I once played a game against a Nimrod deck where I hit their Nimrod with Cassandra Nova and then hit it with a Hazmat and then played a US Agent, and they had a full lane of Nimrods that had 0 power. And it was just like, that's kind of what that will do to Doom 2099. Like, there's going to be a lot of like 2 power Doom bots running around here that are not very threatening. And I think, generally any kind of deck that is able to do like, bounce stuff or whatever. But what honestly worries me about it is Sandman kind of sucks, right? It's not really a good card. But the kind of stuff that beats this stuff is multiple cards played on the final turn of the game. Sandman is still good enough against that to make that matchup unpleasant for a bounce player, I think.
Yeah, I think Sandman mostly stinks. Like this version of Sandman stinks when like your 6-drop doesn't lock it up, or like Sandman into the 6-drop doesn't lock it up. Generally, like Sandman puts you far enough behind, and if you're playing like a Sandman 6-drop deck, you probably are behind already. So it just gets even worse. And then like whatever 6 you play is not going to catch you up. And we're now in a world where it's like, oh well, maybe Sandman make a Doom bot, Doctor Doom make a million Doom bots. Maybe that is enough to catch you up. And these decks that are trying to do like, I don't know, any sort of like double or triple spell on the final turn, like Bounce, even Surfer, any of the kitty decks, whatever. It's like, can you compete with this? And I don't know. It is going to be interesting to see. I do think that since the Doom stuff is contained enough that I assume it is. I don't know. Cards getting released.
I mean, it's part of what worries
How bad can it be?
How bad could it be? Yeah, part of what worries me about Doom is specifically how it interacts with like the current dominant strain of mid-range decks. Because if it's strong enough, I feel like it could push them out. At least the ones that aren't really able to run US Agent, like the Wiccan type stuff. Someone recently pointed out to me that like all these Wiccan decks that don't run tech, they might as well just be discard. They're just doing points. Like they're not playing, like if they're not playing Shang-Chi, they're literally just doing points. It's just numbers. Like that's it. And I think that that's a really salient observation. And it means that if something comes along that does numbers better than them, they have very little recourse because of the way they have to be built.
Yeah, I mean, they are just doing points. I definitely agree with that, but I don't know, things like Morbius are vulnerable to things like Red Guardian early, and like
yeah.
When Diner was happening and people were playing a bunch of Mr. Negative, then there were a bunch of like rogues around, right? And you also have to draw your cards in the right order. You know, like I said, I love A+B. Discard is very much that. Destroy is very much that. And it might seem like if you have 6 payoffs and 6 enablers, it'll work out, but it doesn't always, unfortunately. So Wiccan certainly has its own kind of problems, but I think the Quicksilver versions are good. I think Penny allowing you to cut a 3, very, very nice. They're getting more and more consistent. Their cards obviously are not suffering on any sort of like, oh, like I'm playing bad things at like XYZ spot on the curve or whatever. Like all their cards are very good.
Very good, yeah.
And the fail rate's pretty low, and you're not all in on just like drawing Wiccan or losing. It's just you get a power spike when you do draw it. That's all.
Yeah. And I just Wiccan I think of as like an absolute design coup. I don't know how many more sets Jason Yang has led. I had him on my channel, and I was so impressed at the thought he put into each of the cards in Young Avengers season, how they tied into each other, and how they tied into previous cards. And I remember specifically giving him a little bit of crap about like, okay, come on now, Wiccan's not going to make Quicksilver good. And here we are, December, and the Quicksilver Wiccan deck is the best Wiccan deck. And Like I don't know how many other seasons he's been able to lead, but I would like to start a formal petition to get Jason Yang more work, because that season is, when I think of like the best seasons of Marvel Snap, as far as I know, that was his first, and it is like one of the best seasons all around in terms of design that I think we've ever had.
Yeah, I watched that episode.
Mhm.
I thought it was really good. I also thought that Jason was very smart, and I mean that season was Kate, Wiccan, Speed, and what are the other two?
Uh, Emperor Hulkling, kind of a little bit of a low miss there, but what can you do? And then who was the last one? I swear, I'm blanking on it. Marvel Boy.
Okay, no, that one was great.
Yeah, all bangers. Like,
Yeah,
except Hulkling. It was just like banger, 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 banger.
yeah, Hulkling's still a cool card. I think the thing that disappoints me the most about that is like if it gets generated, it doesn't get
Yeah.
anything.
I mean, same
It
with
just it
Copycat, right?
yeah, it just feels bad. But what are you gonna do?
Hmm. Uh, I think that, as we feel this podcast out, we have various, desired lengths in mind. We're about 90 minutes, not 90 minutes, about 75 minutes into this. Is there a burning topic that you have on your mind right now? Is there something, because I've been leading the conversation this whole time, and I wanted to know what would happen if I just sort of let you cook. So we're introducing a new segment, Let Gerry Cook. And I can tell from his
That's
face that he did not come prepared for this segment because I didn't tell him we were going to be doing it. I just want to
no,
know.
I'm just saying it's dangerous. Like I am known for carrying a notebook with me wherever I go.
Okay.
That is still true to this day. And a lot of times it is just unhinged Magic the Gathering ideas, occasionally some Snap ideas.
Sure.
Uh, or other games, whatever is going on, but uh these things are very much for my eyes only. Like when I cook, it is for me, not for
You
you
you don't want to
because
cook,
no, I love cooking.
but not for me.
It's my favorite thing. It's just like the content that I put out, for example, was always like, okay, this is not deranged, and therefore this is maybe meant for public consumption, But like a lot of the stuff is just, I know that people are not going to like this,
It's
and
2024 though. Being deranged is like it's in.
maybe not my kind of deranged.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. There's a lot of deranged that's doing really well in America right now.
Some of it's good.
Yeah. There's definitely in the last few weeks, there's definitely been some deranged things of both positive and negative outcomes.
Yeah, a lot of negative, but
Yeah,
at least one positive thing I can think of. Anyway, I think I kind of got into it last cast talking about what I would want to do in terms of like new player and returning player experience, those sort of
sure.
things. Like that is the main thing at the forefront of my mind for Snap. But in terms of deck stuff, both things we brought up on this cast already, where I'm just like, people are building Arsh, I'm wrong. And then why the hell the cards like Fenris Wolf are like, why are they here for so long, win so much, and then just immediately fall off as soon as a new card comes out?
It's
Those
insane.
are the things that I want to know.
It's insane. It makes no sense because they're good and then they're not. And it's like it's not like they're even not good. Like they are good. They're still good. Fenris Wolf is still good, but people stopped playing it because new toy. And now everyone's talking about new toy. And it's like, if you bought Fenris Wolf, you could still go do all the Fenris Wolf stuff. It's totally fine. But it's like I wonder if it's a consequence of Marvel Snap's content cycle and the fact that there's no tournaments to like actually determine the veracity of all of us dipshit content creators just saying card good because we won with it, right? Like there's a degree to which you can trust content creators, some more than others, based on their results and their previous track record and all of that. But it's also notable to me that like we wouldn't have to do that if we had tournaments. We wouldn't have to have these conversations if there was an objective measure and there was money on the line and people were actually fully tryharding.
All right, I am kind of off the Fenris Wolf conversation, and now I want to talk about tournaments
Okay.
because that's pretty interesting to me. And I never played Hearthstone tournaments. I certainly watched a lot of events and had my own thoughts on those things around that time. But I forget the name of what it was called, but it was like you bring like 3 decks and ban one, or bring 5, ban one of
Oh
your opponent,
yeah,
or,
that
like
format
that sort of
lasted for
stuff.
like 6 months that everyone hated. Specialist. That's what they called it.
Oh, not even that. I think uh
Oh no, that
I
was
don't
the
know what.
sideboard format. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, no sideboarding, just like you ban uh like, pirate warrior from your opponent every
Yeah.
time or whatever. And then like what does Snap's tournament format look like ideally? Like I know that you went somewhere in Asia to cast. I don't remember
Yeah.
where exactly.
I went to Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Nice.
Um,
Okay.
are you asking me or are you about to answer that question?
No, I honestly don't know. Like I have a lot of ideas, but I don't have a high confidence level for what I think would actually be good. And I also don't even necessarily know that like Snap lends itself well to there being tournaments because of the restrictions that you have to put on it, where it's like, oh, bring multiple decks. Presumably decks can't overlap with cards. Maybe that works out for some stuff, but it does mean that like you wouldn't normally play like Hella or something on ladder, but you might play it in this because it just doesn't overlap with any of the other stuff that you're doing. And I think that for tournament integrity and trying to figure out like what is the best sort of thing, and to what we're talking about, like, is Fenris Wolf actually good? Well, yeah, I guess it is. If it's, you have to play 3 different decks with all different cards, then yeah, maybe you play Fenris Wolf. But what would Snap's tournaments look like to you, ideally, to find out, what sort of like best deck kind of thing there is?
Here's the thing, and this is where it gets problematic. I think it would be bring 2, win with both, which would take too long. It would take too long. Like it would suck. And I think that that also has the like knock-on effect of if you're doing bring 2, win with both, you end up without actual information about what the best deck is. And beyond that, if you're doing that, you lose something, I think, from Magic, where there are players associated with their archetypes. You lose that, and I think that matters so much. I think it is one of the coolest parts of the Magic ecosystem that there's just like a guy who plays this deck all the time. I'll tell you my personal experience with this. I played one PTQ in my entire life. One PTQ ever. I either went +1 or negative or even. It was either 5-3 or 4-4. I genuinely don't remember. It was 2012, 2011, 2010. I'm assuming it was right after the bans of Jace the Mind Sculptor and Stoneforge Mystic. Uh,
Okay.
I'm assuming that since I don't remember, it's probably the one that is worse, so I probably went 4-4. I was a state over for this PTQ because I was going with my friends. And we went to a store the day after, like a local game store. It's a bigger city than the one we're from.
You're trying very hard not to dox yourself
I
right
am,
now, aren't
yes.
you? Yeah.
And I ran into a guy who he had like this really foiled out Grixis Tezzeret deck. Remember that deck? Good lord. It wasn't
I mean,
very good. But
yeah, it wasn't a deck, but like I'm
yes,
sure that if you were around the local area, like you knew that guy liked that deck.
that guy was the only person ever playing that deck in tournaments. I knew him from like Star City games, like I don't know, top 16s or whatever occasionally. Like in whatever things, like he was the Grixis Tezzeret guy, right? And I feel like not having access to that on varying levels, like, at the highest level, you could say, like, Shota Yasuoka is very well known for a certain type of thing, right? But like, even going down to like a relatively more local level of that, where it's like, that's the Grixis Tezzeret guy. It sucks when you have a tournament format that doesn't allow people to define themselves in that way. That's what I feel like.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. And I think it is very true for Snap as well, because there are people who are just, regardless of what month I play them in, like they're always playing Destroy, or they're always playing
Yes.
like, whatever, right? And you need that, because that is part of the reason for these folks to get up in the morning, go to this event, and play in the thing, because they're like, I want to do my Destroy thing
Yeah.
and just beat up on some people. And then it's like, oh, well, then I also have to play like this crappy mid-range deck that I'm not really excited about. And like,
Exactly.
obviously haven't practiced with, kind of play pretty badly, and all these things. And also, we're talking about how bad the economy is. And now you're asking people to like just have two
Multiple
decks full of
decks?
series 5
Yeah.
cards. Come on.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Now, if they want to do a thing where it's like, oh, you're playing in a tournament, we will unlock all the cards for your account or whatever, that'd be cool. No one has ever done that in the history of anything. So,
That's not true. We got that for some of the Conquerors things. They didn't unlock it on
Okay.
our accounts, but they gave us accounts that had all the stuff.
Was this official
Yes.
Marvel Snap?
Official through Marvel Snap, yes.
Okay. Well, that's dope.
Yeah.
I mean, that already makes me think of Second Dinner in a more positive light than like any other game company. So, please fix economy. Thank you.
Yeah, but they didn't do that. I don't think they did that for like the Creator Gauntlet though. That's the only one that they did that was an actual tournament as opposed to like a content creator event. And the one time it's an actual tournament, I'm not sure they did that. So I think like because there were more people in that one. I think it was like 128 people, and so they're probably not giving accounts for that one. They do it when it's like 16 people who all have like whatever concurrent viewer requirement is necessary to get in there. But not when it's like an actual tournament.
I played the Mythic Invitational for Magic the Gathering.
Oh hell yeah! Wait, no, you didn't.
Which the hell I didn't. What do
Didn't
mean?
Didn't you drop out of the MPL that day?
No, this was I think in January, and I dropped out in March or May. I don't remember which.
Oh, I thought you dropped out before the one Andrea one, right?
Yeah.
I thought you dropped out before that. Huh.
No, I kind of got scammed in round 1 by the rules.
Huh?
And then so before the tournament starts, they talk about how like there is a clock. It is 60 minutes. This is before they had like in-game clocks in Arena. And then it would just come down to like life total and then sudden death.
Okay.
So I get a round 1 feature match against Wyatt Darby,
Uh-huh.
and I'm kind of annihilating him. I blow game 1, which would have meant that this would have never happened, right?
Sure.
But we again complaint equity. We don't talk about that.
Right. Why would you ever take responsibility when you could not?
Yeah, it gets down to game 3, and there's like no warning or anything. They're just like, yeah, that's time, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot that was a thing. Where the hell is the clock? And they're like, it's up there, and it's just like directly above me. I can't see it anyway. And it's just like I'm 2 turns from killing him, but instead, I have lower life total because I'm like mono green stabilizing against mono red or whatever. But he has like no hand, no board.
Yeah. I know exactly the situation you're in. You're playing the 3-mana 5/4 Llanowar something. What is it? The
Leatherback Baloth, the 4/5.
No, that's a 4. That's a different one. The 5/4 that can't be blocked by things with 2 or less power.
Oh yeah, Steel Leaf.
Yes,
Champion
yeah. The Goblin Chain Whirler of green. But yeah, you get that down. You stabilize. It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was on camera. And they're just like, oh yeah, Jerry's winning, but no, he lost the life total. And people are just like, what the hell? This is stupid. And all the competitors are like, yeah, this is stupid. And then within a couple hours, they're just like, yeah, never mind. F the clock. We're not doing the clocks anymore. And I'm just like,
but you kept the
what
L?
about me?
They're
just like, no, they're just like, screw you, buddy.
We now learned the real reason why Gerry Thompson resigned from the MPL. Unfair treatment due to the clock.
Those are not related. The thing that is related is that I am mad that Andrea won the tournament. Because, really? Yeah, because if I were winning, he would not have won the tournament.
Talk about complaint equity. Goddamn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even complaining. It's just like, it is my fault that he won.
Right. You let it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. That is actually crazy because like that, like if I recall correctly, that tournament had a ton of money on the line, and they just changed the rules in the middle of it. That does seem kind of bonkers.
Yeah.
That's
That's
like
why you're
a
like, "Oh, anyway, so what I was gonna get to with this was, for testing for this event, it was like, well, I don't want to play on my main account because they did the MPL and they're like, oh, you should be streaming and you should have like your name
yeah.
associated with your arena account because it'd be cool if people know that they're playing against you, blah, blah, blah. And I like being anonymous,
Mhm.
but for this, I was like, oh, I'm just make my arena account Gerry T or whatever. And then they're like, oh, here's this $500,000 tournament or whatever the hell it was. And I was like, well, clearly I don't want to test on the account with my name on it. So I was like, you should give us like secret accounts. And they're like, no. They're like, just make a new account and buy all the cards.
I will say they were objectively correct, at least in the immediate, about it being really cool to play against all of you guys at the time as a scrub, realizing that the guy I lost to was like an MPL player. I remember like the person, it was John Rolfe. I didn't know
Yeah.
I didn't know who that was. It was just like
John's my boy.
some guy named J Rolfe that I lost to a bunch. And it was like, okay, well, that guy's good at this game, presumably. And then you're like you realize later on, it's like, oh no, he's really good at this game. And if I'm able to
He,
compete, that's meaningful to me. Like that
he is,
did matter.
yeah, he is very good. He is a Nebraskan lawyer. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes you happier or sadder about the whole
I knew
state of
that.
affairs, but
I,
yeah, he's great.
yeah, yeah. But like, yeah, like that was like a big thing for me, realizing that like, oh man, these people I'm struggling against, I should be struggling against. Like that really did. They were right. It was cool for exactly me and the other, I don't know, 500 people in the top 500 at the time on Arena, because nobody else would get to play against you guys. So it's like, I don't think it's a good policy, but I will say that as a beneficiary of it, thumbs up. I'll take it.
No, it was cool. And I mean, that event, could say a lot of things about that event. I will say because I lost round 1, I then got to play against Tice in round 2
Yeah.
and got to talk to him a little bit. Very cool dude. I used to watch him stream Hearthstone all the time.
Yeah.
So it was sweet.
Yeah.
And I knocked him out of the tournament, and he, as far as I know, never played Magic again. So
It's that sponsorship money going to good places. I mean, yeah, that actually is a good place for it to go. Like if it had to go to people, that's probably a pretty good person for it to go to.
yeah, agreed. But I don't know. Event was super weird, and I have an arena account that I spent like $500 to get all the standard stuff, and I have like my 2 decks built on that account from that tournament, and haven't touched it since.
And it's just like sitting there, like
Just sitting there.
you should put it on eBay, dude. Like this is a historical relic.
I mean, I'm certainly not going to make my $500 back.
You might. This is Gerry Thompson's MTG Arena account. You might.
I mean, the round 1 feature match is kind of iconic.
Yeah, it could happen. Like I'm not saying you're going to make your $500 back, but someone might pay $60 for this. Yeah,
Yeah, it's possible, but that's not worth my time setting up the auction.
You might.
Tell you what, YouTube chatters, get in the comments section.
You might make a Marvel Snap bundle off of this, Gerry.
Got a fire sale going on.
You might get a For You bundle with 3,000 tokens in Ravonna Renslayer out of this, dude. You might hit a lick off this. It's gonna be great.
I'm not looking for much. And honestly, if you can offer me something that isn't cash, something that's just like more fun,
hell yeah,
then we can talk.
Hell yeah, absolutely. On that note, I feel like it's probably time to end. We've once again crossed the 90-minute mark. These podcasts are going long. It is and also we have once again we started some topics and then immediately we're like, no, we're talking about a different thing now. Like I feel like you really summed up the ethos when you were like 2 minutes into the Fenris Wolf conversation. You're like, I'm off Fenris Wolf. We're talking about tournaments now. That's gonna happen a lot, I feel like.
It was like the third Fenris Wolf conversation, to be fair. So
sure. Just like I'm totally 100% off it is a like that. It's a very explicit note of the implicit thought process that happens without me noticing it all the time. And so I found it apropos. And on that note, I'm off podcasting. It's time to end it.